Right now, a high-stakes meeting on the future of Greenland. Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, they're meeting with their Danish and Greenlandic counterparts as President Donald Trump pushes to acquire the island. Posting earlier today, Trump says that the U.S. needs Greenland for national security. It is vital for the Golden Dome that is being built, and that, quote, NATO becomes far more formidable and effective with Greenland in the hands of the United States. The U.S. could pay $700 billion to buy the 800,000 square mile island from Denmark. This is according to three people familiar with the White House's estimate. But Greenland and Denmark say the island is not for sale. NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Haake joins me now. So, Garrett, the White House says, look, this is about protecting the U.S. and Europe from China and Russia from expanding their influence in the North Atlantic. So what do we know about the meeting that's happened so far and where everyone stands? Are they still dug into their positions?
Well, Vicki, it appears that this meeting may have just concluded. There are photos beginning to surface of the delegation from Greenland and Denmark departing the White House, if that's the case. They were only there for about an hour and a half, a relatively short meeting given the stakes involved, with Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State / National Security Advisor, and Vice President J.D. Vance on the other side of the table. Vance has kind of been the administration's point person on Greenland, even traveling there last year to make a point about this. Notably, Vicki, he traveled to a U.S. military base on the island, and that's really at the crux of all of this. The Greenlanders and the Danes say the U.S. already has a presence in Greenland. They're welcome to see it expand, but they don't want to sell, and they don't want to be part of the United States. So that price tag that you mentioned, the $700 billion estimate, is a high figure, and one that could potentially go higher. As anyone familiar with real estate knows, your number's got to go up if you're trying to buy something that the other party's not interested in selling.
That is a very fair point, Garrett. We also understand Denmark is increasing its military presence in and around Greenland. They're also now doing more exercises with NATO allies. So if the president chooses to try to take the island in some way, are there discussions right now about potentially involving the U.S. military?
I think that's probably unlikely at this point. Vicki, I say this because the president, while he has said this could happen the hard way or the easy way, there's been no indication of any kind of U.S. military buildup in the region. And there's no indication that the Danes want to have a fight over this. These exercises may be more focused on showing the United States that Denmark and Greenland can be good and effective partners in security, as they have been for many years, and that this doesn't require a United States takeover of any kind. If there were to be some kind of conflict, the Danish military is a tiny fraction of the size of the United States. The Danes, ironically, depend a great deal on the protection of NATO, the protection of the United States. A lot of outside analysts are saying if this comes to conflict, or even if it comes to an aggressive move by the U.S. to take over Greenland, it could be the end of that alliance as we know it.
Well, Garrett Haake, we appreciate it. The very latest there on what's happening in Greenland.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.